Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy as always. Before I proceed, as I've been doing with my last few videos, I'd like to talk a little bit about the things that are going on. Between this video and the last one, I'm sorry this took so long. Of course, the terror bill has now been signed into law. It is now the terror law awaiting the date when it'll actually take effect. Of course, it's an absolutely ridiculous move. There are still ways to protest against it, to pressure the principal authors into at least moving for amendments, because the law as it is right now absolutely does not guarantee that it won't be abused by people who are way too eager to abuse it. So yeah, don't give up the fight just yet. It can still be changed in some regard. Also, there's that whole ABS-CBN debacle which has just turned into this ridiculous media circus, and I hope all the representatives who sat in that hearing and essentially bullied these people feel really good about themselves, while lots of workers, thousands of workers, have no jobs, and while families across the country have lost the biggest source of news that they could rely on. So as usual, I've left some links down below to, I don't know, appease us during this time and give us some idea of how we can help. So do check those out. Okay, so this video will be the final sort of catch-up video before I head into talking about new releases in June. So this last video will be talking about TV dramas that I was able to catch within the first 5 months of 2020. First up, let's talk about the second half of the second season of Good Trouble. Now, this show is a spin-off of another show that I haven't seen, The Fosters. However, Good Trouble on its own really stands. I really love the first season of Good Trouble. I feel like of all the shows that focus on young millennials who are just sort of trying to do the right thing and trying to explore what they can do in terms of work, Good Trouble is the only one that I've seen that really has the energy to match the characters. It is essentially a soap opera, and the second season isn't quite as good. I feel like a lot of the conflicts that happen in this season could have been avoided if these characters just talk to each other. Like, it's really not that hard. And what I loved so much about the conflicts in the first season was that they were all like individual small problems that these people have, but because they all live together in the same common living space, all these problems started to intersect in really interesting ways. Here, I don't feel like that intersection really happens. However, it still has that energy, it still has that tone. It's a really well-made show for what it is, and the entire cast is really seriously talented, like both on their individual arcs and when they get together for the group episodes. And the group episodes are like some of the more fun things you could hope to see in the drama. But the two standouts of the season are definitely Emma Hunton and Josh Pence, who have this great sort of will they won't they dynamic going on, which is really rewarding. Next up, we have roughly the second half of season 3 of Black Lightning. Now, I really enjoy this as a superhero show. I think it's unique because it is very small compared to a lot of other shows, and it knows exactly what it wants to talk about. However, with season 3, they sort of changed up the formula a bit. This is the first time that Black Lightning is really taking on like a large-scale epic storyline. And it is interesting in the beginning, but as the season goes on, I feel like they sort of lose control of their own ambition. It's clear that the show doesn't have the budget yet to support their ambition, because a lot of the VFX really isn't great. A lot of the fight scenes just feel way too small and way too bland for the story that they're trying to tell. However, all things considered, this is still one of the better written superhero shows out there, because from the beginning it's always been about how these characters they're primarily African American, how they deal with violence and oppression at their doorstep. And this season really takes that to the extreme. The cast here is small compared to a lot of other Arrowverse shows. However, because the core cast is so small, these actors really get to develop these characters in very rich ways. China Anne McClain continues to be the best part of the show in my opinion as Jen, but if it were up to me, Jordan Calloway and Chris Williams would be Emmy nominees at this point. Next up, we have Star Trek Picard. This is a continuation of the storylines from Star Trek The Next Generation, as well as the Next Generation films. I am not super connected with Next Generation. I've seen all of the original series with Captain Kirk. However, I've only seen Generations and First Contact when it comes to TNG, so I'm not super attached to Captain Picard just yet. However, I do think that any newcomer can hop into the show and they'll still sort of understand everything. As a relative newbie to Picard, I feel like this story really just doesn't say anything very interesting. The main plot has to do with conflict between synthetics and organic life forms, and it connects to Picard's relationship with Data. But where the story goes, I just didn't think was very interesting or complex. Like, it's a very simplistic story for Star Trek in my opinion. And there's something off about the tone here. Like, this is such a dark, edgy show. It makes Into Darkness look like a PG rated thing. However, I don't think Picard is a bad show. I think it is still fun. There's a lot of little moments here and there that sort of show you why we needed to get Patrick Stewart back in here. The production values are absolutely insane. I don't know how CBS keeps getting more and more money for Star Trek. And yeah, Patrick Stewart is a lot of fun. He manages to take this character in different directions when an episodic drama might not have allowed him to do so. Next, we have the 5th and final season of The Magicians, which is kind of like an anti-Harry Potter. It's about a bunch of adults who discover a magic school and that they can do magic and stuff, except the thing with The Magicians is that it's a lot more cynical about magic. I really enjoyed the 2nd to the 4th seasons of The Magicians, but this final season I feel like it really just sort of dropped the ball. There's no real main plot here, there's no actual clear main conflict, so all the random things that happen throughout the season, you don't really know where everything is headed. So it is very confusing to follow, and even if the previous seasons were just as random as this season, there was still like an emotional core to those seasons that let all of that crazy stuff work. Here, that emotional core is completely lacking in my opinion after the first few episodes. However, if you accept this and you adjust your expectations, I think The Magicians is still a really fun show even in its final stretch. There's still a couple of really great conceptual episodes here built around a certain gimmick. And the cast is still having lots of fun being told to do like the craziest things ever. I think Stella Maeve really gets to shine, and Brittany Curran as Fen finally gets something really substantial to do as that character. Next, we have one of my absolute favorite shows of the year and of the last few years, and that is Better Call Saul Season 5. This is of course the spin-off to Breaking Bad. However, at this point, Better Call Saul has evolved into its own thing. It can really stand on its own with its own merits. First of all, applause to this cast. I feel like every single year the Better Call Saul fandom just clamors for these people to finally win an Emmy because the show has won 0 Emmys in the years it's been on. It's incredible what Bob Odenkirk, Jonathan Banks, and Giancarlo Esposito do with their characters, because we know how these characters end up in Breaking Bad. However, they somehow manage to make them more interesting in this show than they were then. Rhea Seehorn is still one of the greatest actresses on screen right now. Her portrayal of Kim Wexler is just so psychologically complete in my opinion. However, one of the surprising MVPs for me this season was Tony Dalton as Lalo Salamanca, who is just an absolutely insane, charismatic, terrifying villain that the likes of whom we've never really seen in this cinematic TV universe or whatever. But what makes me really admire this season in particular, and the reason why I think it's the best season of Better Call Saul so far, is the fact that the writing has gotten so tight to the point that it really feels like all these characters are in bed with each other and that everyone's fate is tied to everyone else's fate. To the point that if one character does something stupid or makes a wrong choice, it literally puts someone else's life at risk, even if that character hasn't met the other character yet. It's just, I don't know how they pulled this off, but you really feel like everyone is stuck in the same bad choice road, as to quote one of the lines in the show. It's also one of the best directed shows of the year, hands down. There's something about it that just feels very, I don't want to say objective, but whenever someone makes a bad choice, it never feels like the show is telling us how to feel. However, it always seems to convey that every single action, no matter what side they choose, is dangerous. Like, every single thing that happens in the show is dangerous, and you feel that danger in the air. It's so palpable, especially during just quiet moments where seemingly nothing is happening. Especially the final 10 minutes of the episode Bad Choice Road. Is some of the scariest TV you'll see this year. It's absolutely amazing, and I love the show. Speaking of long-running TV prestige dramas, let's talk about the 8th and final season of Homeland. Now, I am a huge fan of the first 2 seasons of Homeland, but after that 2nd season, I really just was sort of turned off by the series. I just didn't think it knew what it was trying to say anymore. And that's still true for season 8. I feel like the show is just outdated at this point with its storylines of, like CIA people interfering in like the Middle East and whatnot. It comes off as so antiquated. And I was really hoping for this final season to actually say something about all the bad things that Carrie and Saul have done throughout this entire series, but it really doesn't. However, compared to the last few seasons, this is definitely a more coherent, straightforward season. The thrills here are, for me, much more earned and easier to understand. And Claire Danes and Mandy Patinkin have never lost a step. They're still as compelling as ever. This season really focuses a lot more on Carrie's relationship with Saul, and whenever the show focuses on that, it goes back to its old glory, in my opinion. However, if you want to talk about a show that I really did not like, let's talk about Westworld Season 3. This is easily the worst season of TV I've seen in a while, and it gives me no joy to say that because I do like seasons 1 and 2. I'm not like a gigantic fan of the show, but I enjoyed those seasons for what they were. Season 3 just completely lost me. The only thing I'll say as a positive is that the cast is still trying. It's just that they don't really have good material. Like, none of them have good material. Tessa Thompson is the only person in this cast who manages to do something new and interesting and has kind of like a complete arc for once. But the rest of the show is just so badly made. As much as it has the production values there, as much as some of the CGI looks nice, it just has no personality, visually speaking. The new setting of this like outside world, outside the parks, is just so implausible. It feels like it's populated by NPCs who never respond to like violence or like gunfights or explosions happening around them. The action scenes are awful. They're not well choreographed, they're not well shot or well edited. And while Westworld has always been sort of pretentious, this season is just painful. Like, it's so boring. This whole exploration of like humanity's free will and whatever, and the conclusions that it gets to are just so comically cynical that it's hard to take anything seriously. It's just, I don't know what they were thinking with this show. They wasted every single promising thing that they had going for them. And I am officially not a fan of Westworld anymore, so thanks, Season 3. Now to talk about a show that has improved from its previous season, let's talk about Outlander Season 5. To be fair, the show still isn't perfect. It's never been perfect. It still gives in to the series' worst vices. It tries to be so faithful to the source material that it ends up kind of wasting its time. The season isn't structured in a very clear way. Lots of things happen that don't feel like they add to the whole. And yes, as always, there is sexual violence in this season that absolutely could have been taken out and avoided. However, for the most part, this is actually a really enjoyable season of TV because most of it is just the Frasers on their new homestead, just sort of enjoying life and like figuring out solutions to these little problems that they have on their farm. And it's a testament to how good the actors are that these relatively uneventful episodes are still emotionally impactful. And for the main cast, this is some of the strongest work they've ever put in. Sophie Skelton and Richard Rankin have really grown on me as Bree and Roger, which is saying a lot because I hated Roger back then. Katrina Balfe is still amazing as Claire, but Sam Heughan really, like, especially in the 7th episode of the season, he gives the performance of his life. I had no idea like this show is still capable of giving me like that feeling of having my heart in the pit of my stomach, but the 7th episode really does that. And the latter half of the season in particular is some of the best stuff that Outlander has ever done. I apologize if you can hear cats in heat in the little silences between my sentences. There's no way for me to stop them when they got it going on. So talking about another show that got better as it went on, let's talk about roughly the second half of Batwoman Season 1. It's tough to recommend the show as a whole so far because the first few, maybe 7 episodes of Batwoman are really hard to get through. They are just very poorly made, incredibly cheesy, lots of terrible dialogue and over-the-top performances. However, when this season gets past its crisis episode, it just exponentially gets better and so much more interesting. The characters get really likable, and there are certain episodes here that are just pure horror, which is amazing because when you say Gotham City, to me, I always think like scary characters and situations. And what Batwoman gets so right is the fact that they choose to focus on the relationship between Kate and Alice. And Rachel Skarsten, who plays Alice, is clearly the MVP of this season. She is so good. Her character is one of the most well-developed villains that I've seen in a superhero thing in a long time. And while it is true that Ruby Rose, who plays Kate, has left the show, just as she was beginning to find her footing, I really hope she's just okay. But I also hope that they keep Rachel Skarsten here as Alice, because she is really something else. And if they stick with the development they've had so far for that character, I think the show could really still continue to be good. Now, Batwoman lost a couple of episodes because of the coronavirus, although, you know, it was just a couple of episodes, so it was fine. However, The Good Fight lost 3 out of 10 episodes, which is a pretty big chunk. However, even with the loss of 3 episodes, Season 4 of The Good Fight is still incredibly good. Like, those 7 episodes we got, still amazing. This is still unlike any legal drama you've ever seen. The cast is so good because I feel like they handle satire so well. Like, they're balancing on this edge between seriousness and just pure parody. I feel like, you know, most of the humor actually comes from them riding that line, and rather than the scripts themselves. Season 4 is definitely less wild in terms of like form and whatnot compared to Season 3. However, what Season 4 has going for it is the fact that it really creates a sense of paranoia throughout the entire thing. You really feel like all these characters are being watched by like some government agency or by some higher power because of this whole Memo 618 thing that really drives most of the plot. But what I think makes The Good Fight valuable is the fact that it really satirizes everything, and not just the news, but I feel like it also takes shots at us, the audience, and how we process news, how we consider like these hypothetical political situations. Even the characters aren't let off the hook in this show. There's an entire episode that's set in an alternate reality where Hillary won, and the show treats it like it's a bad thing. It doesn't allow the characters to be vindicated even if they do support Hillary. And there's another episode that is entirely about conspiracy theories about what happened with Jeffrey Epstein. It's just an absolutely insane show that is so fearless and always speaks its mind. I love it. However, the main show I wanted to talk about for this episode is the best show of 2020 in my opinion so far. It's also the best thing that HBO's done in many, many years, and that is Season 2 of My Brilliant Friend. This is an Italian language series. It's essentially a coming-of-age story about 2 women growing up in Naples. I think from Season 1 to Season 2, it goes from the 50s to the 60s. Everything about My Brilliant Friend is just expertly done. Like, it's seriously one of the best shows ever made in my opinion. Gaia Gerace, who plays Lila, one of the lead girls, she was my favorite lead actress in a drama last year. Here, she's still absolutely incredible. If that character was really self-confident and brash in the first season, here in Season 2, she's been put into a situation where she really can't express herself as much. So you see her take this character's self-worth into, like, she really just erodes that sense of self-worth, and Lila ends up becoming more of this person that she swore she'd never become, and it's heartbreaking to see that. Lots of great supporting performances as well. Anna Rita Vitolo, who plays Lenu's mother, gets a surprisingly emotional episode. Giovanni Amura plays like just an absolute scum human being, and he's really good at it. And Francesco Serpico plays like the king of the soft boys. He is the most insufferable, like pseudo-intellectual dude you've ever seen, and you know he's doing his job well because you hate this character. However, to me, unquestionably the MVP here is the other lead, Margherita Matsuko, who plays Lenu. She's just unbelievable. One of the best screen performances I've ever seen. I know that sounds like hyperbole, but I mean it. The thing with her performance is that Lenu is such a complex character. She has so much ambition and jealousy and confusion inside her, but Matsuko never actually raises her voice, I think. It's all just done in quiet looks and like just lots of internal like bubbling over, and it's done so well. And this actress is like 17 years old or something, and she actually has to play older in this season. And it's incredible what she's able to pull off because you really believe it. Watching My Brilliant Friend, in my opinion, honestly feels like watching an 8-hour movie, but I mean that in the best way. Everything is so cinematic and so elegant. Everything is so well made and well shot. Every time that the directors use a certain directorial device, it always works. There's a lot of voiceover narration that's perfect because it isn't just repeating what you're seeing on screen. There are time jumps throughout the season, but they never feel cheap. It never feels like you're missing anything between time jumps. And it really just tells such a great story, such a great like literary story. Again, it is like a coming of age story, but it's also about how financial struggles, how a patriarchal society and how a flawed education system can define these two girls' lives, but also essentially destroy their friendship, and it sends them down very different paths. And what's so great about how the show is written is that literally every moment is informed by every other moment before it. So every time any character makes any decision or choice, you understand completely the drive behind those choices. And even if they're terrible choices, you understand psychologically why they have to make those choices. It just feels so complete, you know. There's never a moment where you stop and have to recall what happened before. You just understand where these characters are from moment to moment, and that's absolutely stunning. If you feel like you're gonna be into a foreign language slow drama that is still incredibly rewarding, although trigger warning, there is rape and there is domestic violence here, but the focus is always on the women. They always have agency. It's always their story. Alright, so that's it for this episode. Next video, we'll finally be talking about newer releases that I was able to catch in June. Please look out for that. Again, check out the links below to stay updated on the situations happening in the Philippines. And as always, please do leave me a comment down below if you'd like, and let's have a conversation.